The faction map is a tool from the adaptive leadership framework and will help you think politically and strategically by mapping the political landscape around your idea. Ultimately, the faction map is a way for you to understand the ideas and position of the people around your issue and help you define a strategy to think politically about progress. Here is a faction map around your issue. Our purpose at the end of this exercise is to have all the different factions around the issue you're dealing with outcome and mapped, specifying for each their preferred outcome, their values, their loyalty, their losses at stake. But let's see how to start. Imagine that you have an idea, you want to change something. You will get out, you will talk to people. You will find out what people think about your aspiration, your purpose, your vision. And some people may like it. Some people might not like it. Some people are saying, I don't think that they can do it. Or some people may not know you. Who are they? So you record and hear ideas, opinion, and ways of thinking about your aspiration or purpose. You will not assess whether or not you agree with them at this point. You will simply find out what is out there. After you do that, you will cluster the opinion and you will identify some faction. What is a faction? Let me define it. It's a group related to an issue with an opinion, perspective, viewpoint, need, experience, expectation, loyalties, opportunities, motivation, fears, potential losses, that they're common. So every time you have a group, an idea, you have people with different opinion. In this case, you can see all the blue is mapping all the people that seems to be in favor at a minimum about your idea. Some people seems to be on the fence or not clear. Some other seems to be against your idea. In the faction mapping, you group and cluster those opinions together and you try to give them a colorful name. For instance, a faction 1 identified what we can call the old guard. The faction 2, the engineers that are excited about this new technology idea. And the third, the silent, the people that don't know exactly what to think or what to say. What is the purpose of the faction map? For instance, if you are there, try to advance the idea and you realize that the old guard faction is against you, you will want to know more about them, find out their preferred outcome, their values, their loyalties, their losses at stake. Instead of trying to ask them directly, what are your values, what are your loyalties, you will simply listen to their positions with the intent to understand, and you will try to see what is important for those persons to protect during the change. Now, this work will end up identifying several categories, and after you have all the faction map, you will be able to say which one could be potential partner, which one are clearly the opposition, what is the position of the authorities, what are the people that will not want to do it on their dead body, who are the troublemakers that normally voice ideas and mention the unmentionable. What is each faction mapping in those 5 categories? Let me give you an example of what I just mentioned to you in a simple CRM Oracle software rollout. As I start a rollout, the key groups involved in this are, for instance, my boss or my department, the department, another department, Department C, the director of the organization. Now, finding out those stakeholders has really been very, very helpful in my experience. What is really much more helpful is identify the factions. And that is the reason why this tool is particularly helpful. Besides the stakeholder, which do not give you, as you can see, much trouble, much potential for moving forward, you now identify a different thing. And you do it, identify what do people say. What are people say when they hear about the issue of advancing the state-of-the-art technology in the department? Some people may say, I hate this technology. Some people might love the system. Some people, who cares about the new system? This too will pass. Or, I hear that the vendor company is going out of business. Or, did you hear what a disaster was the May rollout? Again, those are simply a recording of what you have heard, regardless of whether or not you agree or disagree. This would be your faction map in this case, after you have grouped those ideas. You may identify, for instance, the tech-savvy, people that love technology, that want a deployment and want to do it fast. You may identify the terrified, that hate technology. They don't want a deployment. Their competing loyalties are accurate, is doing a well-done work, and their potential losses is months without high-quality work. You may identify your third faction, the indifferent. They are okay with the technology. They want the deployment only if strictly necessary. They work not so much. Their competing value is the work related to technology, and their potential losses is chaos. So this is an example of one way to put the faction map, but you can theoretically map this in a completely different way. You can, for instance, define your challenge as advancing state-of-the-art technology, and you may think that an important dimension of faction is age. In that case, you will have those three different factions: the new generation, the older generation, the baby boomers. Clearly, you're mapping those groups without trying to see which one are really more relevant to the faction. That's the reason why this is an iterative process, one that continues, and that you end up eventually coming up with the final result. So here is a faction map, and this is what you may end up. Maybe your challenge was not properly defined. Maybe what you were doing and what you originally defined as the software implementation is in reality a much bigger challenge and needs to be redefined in terms of redefining what service means in a federal agency. Or not. Or maybe you go back to the faction map that we talked about earlier. So here is the final result. This will be faction map 1. And out of that map, you want to, of course, identify those 6 groups and who falls into those 6 groups. And as you can see, we can use the tech-savvy faction as partners. We can use the terrified and the indifferent. Right now, we consider those an opposing faction. But even in that case, what do they value? How we can bring it to our side? And in answering this question, we identify the next experiment, the most important part of this faction map, and the one that really I wanted to share with you. Because out of this, we, for instance, identify that provide effective job task training before the release, involving the terrified in system release decision, and bring the indifferent to your side, giving them a role in the release, and may be a very good idea in your advancing and making progress for your ideas. So, let me give you another example of Lincoln on the passing of the 13th Amendment. Here is an example of the key stakeholders of that initiative, which, as you can see, not very helpful to actually know what to do next. But here we go if we actually define instead some ideas that we heard throughout the movies, throughout the video clips. Well, there's too many to mention, but those are all direct quotes that we heard throughout the movie and throughout the video clips. Now, we need to take, and with creativity, we need to realize what is the right adaptive challenge, a challenge that we're dealing with, and how we can group those different ideas in way that makes sense, that identify faction. Here is my faction map for the passing of the 13th Amendment of the Constitution to abolish slavery based on the movie Lincoln, and that I would like to share with you. We have, of course, different groups: the Republican Party radicals, the Republican Party conservatives, the two that you have seen Lincoln working with Stevens first, and then with another group of people earlier. In those cases, those are all factions that have a relationship to the issue, a preferred outcome, a competing value, and, of course, a potential loss. Those 6 groups fall into 6 groups, and those 6 different groups through this map give you a sense of what is possible to advance the issue. And if you think about it, while Lincoln didn't have the faction map, of course, what he actually see in the movie is exactly the deployment of those next experiment, the convincing of the cabinet of clarifying the purpose of the amendment, the securing of the support of the conservative Republicans to agree secretly negotiate with the South, or the securing support of the on-the-fence Democrat and the reining in a top radical by clarifying the vision and stressing agreement on the ultimate purpose of the measure.